Let's get ready to rumble!
Bob Arum, he says the next logical fight for Tyson Fury is Dillian Whyte. But when has logic ever stopped boxing from doing the illogical? He wants Tyson Fury to fight 3 times next year. Yeah. And he wants the winner of Usyk and Joshua. Until I hear Tyson Fury say he wants to fight Dillian as his mandatory or as a challenger, and, you know, he's not going to try and gank Dillian for an 80-20 split or even 70-30 because they know Dillian ain't going to take the fight. You know, I don't want to get into that too much. That's up to Dillian to negotiate. But until I hear Fury that he wants to fight Dillian, it means nothing. Andy Lee and Bob can say whatever they like about the Dillian fight. Until Tyson Fury says something, it means nothing. Forget the WBC arbitration between them and Dillian. When Fury wants to fight, then shit will be happening. So, Bob Arum still running his mouth today. We've lost money on every Crawford fight. Talking about the 130,000 to 190,000 pay-per-view buys that Crawford did against Porter. Now, this website is saying you can't blame that on Crawford or Top Rank. Well, I am here to say you can blame this firmly on Top Rank. Bob Arum deliberately blocked Terence Crawford from fighting Manny Pacquiao to protect the cash cow.
Would you have reservations if he said, next fight I want Terence Crawford?
Well, I killed the fight. Yeah.
So you wouldn't want that for Manny?
No, because I would know how it would end. I mean, not that I knew it would end in serious disability for Manny. That I wouldn't know. But as a fight, it would only end one way.
You wouldn't want to see Manny take a lot of damage? Would it pull towards your emotions, putting him in a position like that?
Forget my emotions. I wouldn't want to see him take that kind of damage because it might affect his quality of his future life.
Pacquiao and Terence Crawford were both on Top Rank for at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 years, simultaneously, at the same time. And that fight never got made. Now, Bob Arum was all about in-house fights. That's all he was all about. Before he was taking Al Heyman to court and the PBC was on the rise, all about in-house fights. Bradley got 3 shots, or fights, should I say, against Manny Pacquiao. 3, in the time Terence Crawford was there. Now, admittedly, Terence wasn't always at 147 when Manny and Bradley were at welter. But Terence is naturally bigger than Manny. Bomac, his trainer, said they could have moved up to 147 a long time ago, around the time they were challenging Jeff Horn for the WBO belt. If Terence had a choice of unifying belts at 140 or jumping up to 147 to fight Manny, what path do you think he would have taken? He would have moved up. But the fight wasn't there. Manny didn't want it, and Bob certainly didn't want it. Look at it. Look at it logically. Manny loses the belt to Jeff Horn, then Terence moves up to 147 to challenge Jeff Horn. All of a sudden, an opportunity opens up for Terence at 147 when Jeff Horn's got the belt. It was never there when Pacquiao had it. All of a sudden, Terence is at 147. But why? Because after Manny lost to Jeff Horn, his relationship with Bob went really bad. With Michael Kantz, he already had the fight made in the Middle East for Manny to fight Amir Khan. Bob vetoed it and said, no, you're going to Australia. He lost the belt, lost his relationship with Manny, and now Terence is called in to get the belt back. So am I to believe that if Manny had beat Jeff Horn and was still with Bob, he would have invited Terence to the party at 147? I don't believe it.
Would you have reservations if he said, next fight I want Terence Crawford?
Well, I killed the fight. Yeah.
Bob stopped the Khan fight and Manny suddenly found a voice. He wasn't this polite boxer who, never raised his voice against Bob. He was calling Bob, oh, Bob's an old man, doesn't know what he's doing. Then he took him to court for purse money that he said he wasn't paid against Matisse. It was over. The Pacquiao fight for Crawford, and I have no doubt Crawford would have won. We would now see Terence as the biggest star in boxing today. But just like other black fighters who claim Bob sabotaged him, Rigondeaux, Floyd, Terence Crawford was a victim of the Bobster, as far as I'm concerned. Early 2017, Eric Gomez from Golden Boy, he retaliated when Bob accused Golden Boy of protecting Canelo from Triple G and said, Crawford is the future, but you're not going to put him in with your cash cow, Bob. Why are you attacking us? Look at Pacquiao's in-house fights. Tim Bradley, Cotto, Clottey, Vargas, Tim Bradley, and Antonio Margarito, they all got the fight. While there was that Pacquiao and Floyd standoff, fight not happening, he certainly wasn't trying to put Crawford in with Pacquiao because he was trying to protect that payday. You know, he gets a percentage of Pacquiao's purses. That's a once-in-a-lifetime purse. He wasn't working for Terence. He didn't bring Crawford up to 147 while Manny was there, because if Crawford was performing like we've seen him perform at 147, what's that? 6 world title fights, 6 stoppages, people would have been saying, yo, Bob, when are you going to make this fight? But Bob wasn't having it. Post-Mayweather Pacquiao's looking for new opponents. Crawford's name comes up. Bob says, we're not going to make that fight at this stage of Manny's career because it's going to end badly for him. And they went for the third Bradley fight. Is this a man who's working for Terence Crawford or sabotaging him? 3 Bradley fights? 3? According to Freddie Roach, him and Manny agreed and said yes to a fight with the boy from Omaha. Crawford agreed. Freddie said, I think Bob might be protecting Manny from Terence. He's never tried to make the fight. Never. Never. All this money you lost on Terence Crawford, we can write that off for all the money you made on Pacquiao by protecting him from Terence Crawford. At the Fight City, they've got an interesting website covering historical boxing events. Muhammad Ali turned pro in 1960, which is 2 years before the Gallup poll reported that 40% of Americans thought boxing should be outlawed. So Ali retired in 1978 after winning the heavyweight title for the 3rd time against Leon Spinks, and then made the ill-advised comeback to take on Larry Holmes. The fight was stopped at the end of round 10, one-sided beating. Ali looked like a zombie in there. He was taking his thyroid medication to assist him in weight loss, but he ended up popping them like Skittles. So he looked slim, but he had done irreparable damage to his body. He literally turned his insides to a furnace. He couldn't build up a sweat to warm up before the fight or anything. The Mayo Clinic withheld details that he couldn't hop on one leg with the agility expected. His coordination was gone. His motor skills were gone. He had trouble touching his nose accurately. They withheld the information because Ali could not pass a standard physical in Las Vegas. So the precondition was the clinic would examine him and Las Vegas would grant Ali a license. That's why they withheld all that information. When Angelo Dundee stopped the fight at the end of the 10th, most people assumed that this would be the last time they would see Ali in a boxing ring. The World Boxing Commission had already tried to revoke Ali's boxing license in Nevada and New York, while the British Boxing Board of Control let it be known that they would never sanction another Muhammad Ali fight. But Ali, post-fight, he said, I'm a long way from a shambling wreck. This is what he told the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, before delivering a poetical challenge to Holmes in a voice so slurred that they opted not to air it. Ali's longtime physician, Ferdy Pacheco, could no longer condone Ali going in the ring after the taxing fight with Ernie Shavers in 1977. Pacheco concluded that Ali won the fight, but his kidneys lost the decision. When Ali asked Pacheco why he said he was all washed up, Pacheco said, I don't. What I do say is you should not be fighting. After the defeat to Holmes, Pacheco told Bob Arum, in 2 or 3 years we'll see what the Holmes fight did to his brain and kidneys. That's when all the scar tissue in the brain will further erode his speech and balance. Meanwhile, Ali found himself a new doctor, Harry Dimopoulos, who provided a glowing bill of health. So now they're projecting a fight against Trevor Berbick. The Ali versus Holmes fight was a huge record-setting event. Sportscasters, writers' friends, and Ali's wife, however, all pleaded with him to retire. But there's an individual here they're naming James X. Cornelius, a Muslim who had no problem promoting the fight. He apparently had no familiarity with prize fighting, was deep in debt, and had an FBI warrant out for his arrest. He wanted to promote the Ali Berbick fight in the newly sovereign state of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Trevor Berbick, born in Jamaica, settled in Canada to pursue his pro career, was the opponent. Deeply religious, eccentric, strong, muscular, capable. Went on to win the WBC title in 1984. He won the Canadian heavyweight title in 1979 and scored an upset victory over former WBA heavyweight champion John Tate on the undercard of the first Roberto Duran Sugar Ray Leonard fight. He had also took Larry Holmes 15 rounds in a title defense. December the 11th, 1981, 8 months after the defeat to Holmes, the fight was set in Nassau, the Bahamas. Not a hotbed for boxing, they would obviously be able to get away with licensing and medicals without strict scrutiny or supervision. The main players in Ali's team was Wally Muhammad and Bundini Brown. Angelo Dundee was still there, head coach. Now, a lot of people are skeptical about Ali going in the ring after witnessing the Holmes fight. In defense of Ali, Angelo Dundee said, while Ali's footwork has gone and he was only half of what he used to be, half is good enough to beat Trevor Berbick. A concerned Bert Sugar, he dubbed the bout the trauma in the Bahamas before it even took place. Ali used Thomas Hearns, who was on the undercard, as a sparring partner. Now, the Fight City are saying the middleweight spoke with guarded confidence of the former champion's abilities. Ali can still do anything with the left hand that he wants, said Hearns. I think he's a much better man than Berbick, and he can go on and be victorious.
Next, middleweight Tommy Hearns, who went a few exhibition rounds with Ali.
I think for myself that he's a much better man than Berbick. I had the pleasure of seeing Berbick fight before, and he don't have the style that's Ali. He's not the caliber of fighter as Ali. And I feel that with Ali's ability, I feel he could go on and be victorious.
Another sparring partner, Jeff Stoudemire.
Well, I can't stop him, but he has his own, he's self-motivated somehow, but I feel that he should, after this one, should call it quits.
That's a clip from the sparring exhibition that Ali and Hearns had earlier that year. Hearns was literally using him as a punch bag. The Ali-Berbick fight was widely condemned. Somebody from the NBC network said Ali floated like an anchor and stung like a moth. The Montreal Gazette said it was a death watch. Ray Arcel and Dan Duva called the fight a damn shame and a disgrace. The promotion of the bout turned into a nightmare. Cornelius couldn't come up with the cash for Ali's advance of a measly $100,000. Don King stepped in, but Cornelius was determined not to have King involved, and he found help from a wealthy American backer named Victor Sayer, with deep ties to the Bahamas. Through a lucrative money laundering scheme, Sayer agreed to put up the needed cash, but there was a snag. Berbick, known to switch promoters with such frequency that he often lost track, had already signed with King, who refused to release him unless he was paid. When Cornelius arrived at the Princess Hotel in the Bahamas, negotiations with King soon turned violent. According to Cornelius, King seized him by the collar and repeatedly punched him in the mouth, while Don's story is that Cornelius entered the room with 4 Nation of Islam heavies who worked him over hard. King claims to have slipped 2 C notes to a couple of the thugs during the beating, after which they told Cornelius, I think we've done enough. Each side denied the other story. By fight night, Berbick still hadn't been paid, and neither had the judges who flew to the Bahamas on their own dime. Incredibly, Sayar's team neglected to obtain enough boxing gloves, forcing the fighters to share them. And when they realized no one had thought to acquire a bell, they took one off a nearby cow. Meanwhile, the Queen Elizabeth Sports Centre, once a landing field for bombers during World War II, was something of a dump. The bout itself was a dull disaster. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't as bad as the Holmes fight. Unable to shed the excess weight, Ali, slow and plodding, was a puffy 236. Berbick, some 20 pounds lighter. The lone highlight came when Berbick begged the ref to stop the fight in the middle of round 7 due to the punishment he was inflicting on Ali. After losing by unanimous decision, Ali was asked at the post-fight press conference if he believed his skills may have gone. He responded, "They have gone. Not may have gone, they have gone." In admission of the fading of his physical talent, something all athletes experience with age, but Ali refused to acknowledge anything else was wrong. When Berbick was desiccated by a young Mike Tyson in November of '96, he too was getting punchy. He had become erratic, fabricating bizarre, improbable excuses for his losses and outlandish conspiracies. He eventually turned to crime, sexual battery, housebreaking, larceny, before he was summarily deported back to Jamaica. In 2006, a property dispute led to his murder at the hands of his nephew. Now, I've added a lot of extra information in this video, but the meat and bones of the video is some transcripts from The Drama in the Bahamas, a book by Dave Hannigan, Muhammad Ali's Last Fights. I'm probably not going to buy it because I've got so many boxing books, some that I haven't even read yet, but it seems interesting. There's another book out there called Blood Brothers, The Fatal Friendship Between Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X by Randy Roberts and Johnny Smith. Now that sounds very interesting. Ali was fighting for $100,000 in the Bahamas. Ali was in bad shape physically, we know this. And with his health declining, he was in hospital. This is around 1982. And he had a lawsuit for $1.1 million against Don King, who hadn't paid him his full purse for the fight against Larry Holmes. Now, this story is very suspect to me. They say Don King sent a man with a suitcase filled with $50,000 and an agreement for Ali to sign which would end the debt. And Ali signed the agreement and took the money. The agreement also gave Don King the right to promote any future fights Ali would be in. Ali's lawyer reportedly cried when he found out how the lawsuit had ended. Do I believe that story? But that's how far Ali had fallen financially at that time, and physically, and mentally. Because if it is true, Don caught Ali slipping when he was very, very vulnerable, that he took 50 grand against a $1 million lawsuit. Holmes, he claimed that King had taken $10 million over the years in earnings. In one instance, he claimed he only received $150,000 from a contract which guaranteed him $500,000. Holmes settled for a payment of $150,000 and signed an agreement that he could no longer say negative things about King in the press. You know, why would Holmes do that as well? I guess, you know what it is, like, if you're going to fight these guys in court, promoters with Don King with long paper, and the lawsuit is going back and forth, well, you need long paper as well. It's not free to fight in judicial courts like that. It's just not. But in saying that, Ali wanted 1.1 from a purse of 8 million. So I don't do maths. So he got at least 6.9 of his purse. Where did the rest of the money go? And all the other big purses he earned throughout his career, where did his money go is the question. And before you even think of writing in the comment section that Don King took all of it, no, he didn't. He didn't take nowhere near all of it. Don King didn't promote all of his fights. Bob Arum promoted a lot of his fights. And there's no report of Arum shafting Ali for any money at all. I mean, Ali's nephew is signed to Top Rank right now. But, you know, I shouldn't even be saying that. Like, you know, I don't look at it like that. He had the money. He spent it. Bought nice cars. Had beautiful women, beautiful children, a beautiful life. Beautiful houses. He lived life on his own terms. It is what it is. A lot of people criticize Angelo Dundee for going ahead with the Holmes fight and the Berbick fight. They critique Dundee like Dundee could stop Ali doing anything. Who's going to tell Muhammad Ali anything? That's Muhammad Ali. According to the medical profession, and certainly Ferdy Pacheco, he should have stopped. Ideally, after the Foreman fight, 74, or maybe the Thriller in Manila in 75, but definitely after the Shavers fight in 77. But if he had stopped, he wouldn't have went on to become the first man to win the heavyweight title 3 times, would he? Dundee was actually happy when Ali retired after winning the title for the 3rd time, and said many times he opposed Ali's return from retirement and tried to talk him out of it. It was no use. Dundee would relate later that Ali told him he was going to fight with or without his friend and longtime trainer. Dundee believed him and decided Ali was better off with him in his corner, even if he desperately believed Ali shouldn't have come back. What people don't understand, Angelo's strengths wasn't so much in the day-to-day training. He didn't train Sugar Ray Leonard day-to-day. That was Janks Morton and Dave Jacobs. He didn't train Ali day-to-day. That was Wally, Bundini, and whoever else was there. They done the day-to-day training. Dundee's strengths were man management, in my opinion. Man management, strategizing, picking opponents. He wouldn't take the Sugar Ray Leonard job unless they allowed him to vet all the opponents that Ray fought. He wouldn't take the job. Fighters and trainers frequently, this is well written by USA Today, have complicated testing marriages. Sometimes it is because the trainer wants to remake the fighter into something he is not. Ali already had most fundamentals down when he came to Angelo, says Gil Clancy. They got along very well together from the beginning. There were never bumps in the road. That's why the relationship lasted. Dundee resisted any notion of trying to mold Ali into something he was not, in or out of the ring. Perhaps that's why their bond was as sturdy as a 100-year-old oak tree. Dundee says fighters change trainers the way most people change their shorts. Dundee always let Ali be Ali. Dundee said, I never had a conversation with Muhammad about anything personal. He says, we never discussed religion. I never interfered with this kid when he left the gym. He's a man. He can take care of his own things. None of my business. All I wanted to do was work with him as a fighter. That was my reputation with him, period. Dundee said, I learnt an object lesson. Star quality shouldn't be with star quality. After Ali won the gold medal, he turned pro with Archie Moore training him. Dundee said Archie didn't have any time for the kid. Then he made a mistake. He asked Ali to sweep the kitchen at the training camp. Ali said, I don't sweep any kitchen for my mother. And that was the end of the relationship between Ali and Archie Moore. They did go on to fight in the ring, and Ali dismounted him very quickly. Archie was washed and old by then. Ali returned to Louisville. His management team contacted Angelo Dundee and interviewed him. The trainer recalls telling the team he would gradually groom the fighter. I don't like to rush anything. In fact, I have a reputation for using a sharp shovel when I look for opponents. You know, Angelo Dundee is one of the best of all time. He knew what he was doing. Angelo knew he had a special talent, and he wasn't concerned about Ali's religious beliefs, the Nation of Islam, or any of that. And when they was around Ali, I heard there'd be times they say, yo, tell Angelo to disappear while we talk amongst each other as brothers. And Ali would say, no, Angelo stays. That's the trust he had in Angelo Dundee. It's probably one of the best fighter-trainer relationships ever, in hindsight. I mean, we're talking 20 years, with a few gaps, obviously. 67 when they took his license and he came back in 1970.